An immigration crackdown underway across the country and here in Ohio. Ahead on Face the State, President Donald Trump swiftly putting his immigration policies into action, including ICE raids and deportations. An immigration attorney weighs in on the new measures. Will they stand up in court? And what he's hearing from those reaching out to him for help.
You can only claim asylum at a designated port of entry.
Ohio U.S. Senator Bernie Moreno just introduced a bill he says would crack down on America's broken asylum system. Hear what he says needs to be fixed and how his bill would do that. Plus, his message to legal Haitian immigrants in Springfield about their fears of deportation. Plus, the Trump tariffs. What impact could the potential sanctions on China, Canada, and Mexico have on Ohio businesses? 10 TV's Clay Gordon sits down one-on-one with former Congressman and President of the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, Steve Stivers.
You think Ohio business can keep up with some tariffs? You think Ohio's prepared for that?
Face the State starts right now. Right now, the Trump administration's strict immigration policies are playing out across the country and our state. Already, jail records show ICE has detained roughly 100 people in Ohio. Also, an Ohio senator introduced a new bill to continue the crackdown on illegal immigration and fix what he calls America's broken asylum system. Meanwhile, some of his own legal constituents are living in fear that they may no longer be allowed to stay in the U.S. Thank you for joining us for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. As these efforts continue, I went to Springfield, Ohio last week to hear from leaders within the Haitian community. They tell me the fear of deportation is extremely high. Springfield is home to an estimated 12 to 15,000 Haitian immigrants. Many of them are here under temporary protected status, TPS, because of unstable conditions in their home country. TPS for Haiti runs until February of 2026. Community leaders say many are worried about President Trump's immigration orders and ICE raids going on around the country right now. They say a lot of people are actually staying out of sight because of their fears.
Our Haitian community is worried. Not everybody is well informed as we are. So they think not only there is going to be a raid, but they think everybody is subject to deportation. That's what they think for the most part. And that causes some people to lose wages because they don't show up for work. They're going to get fired.
They have the perspective that even if you have a legal status, you're still at risk to deportation.
Jacob Payan helps those in the Haitian community fill out some immigration forms and refers them to organizations or attorneys who can help with other questions and needs. Community leaders say they are working to give the immigrant community peace of mind by giving them good information. I asked Ohio U.S. Senator Bernie Moreno about the fears in Springfield. Here's what he said.
If they're here legally, by the way, anybody who's in this country legally should not have any fear whatsoever. The people who need to be concerned are the people who are here illegally and have committed crimes.
Moreno wants to crack down on illegal immigration and help legal asylum seekers by fixing a loophole in federal law. He recently introduced the Refugees Using Legal Entry Safely, or RULES Act, last week. He says the loophole has existed for decades. It's that someone can come into the country illegally and then claim asylum. Senator Moreno defines refugees strictly as those being discriminated against because of race, nationality, or religion. He says the bill would assure a quicker path for asylum seekers who follow the laws. If passed, the RULES Act would do 4 things. It would stop the release of asylum seekers into the U.S. before their cases are heard. Also, a person denied asylum once could never apply again. It would prohibit migrants who are in the U.S. illegally and get caught by law enforcement from claiming asylum. And all requests for asylum will have to be made at legal ports of entry.
So you can't cross the river or jump over a wall or go under a tunnel or be smuggled on boat. You have to come through a legal port of entry, request asylum, wait for your asylum claim to be heard before you're allowed into the country.
Senator Moreno says by law, asylum applications should be processed within 180 days. He says there's a backlog of several years right now. And joining me to talk about the raids, the immigration orders, and the fears in the immigrant community is immigration attorney Rishi Oza. He is a partner in the Ohio-based firm Brown Immigration Law. He joins me today from North Carolina, where the firm has an office. Rishi, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Good morning.
Hey, first of all, what do you think of the Trump administration's immigration policies as they're playing out right now?
Well, I mean, I think Mr. Trump ran on a enforcement-heavy platform. He's carrying out what he ran on. I think it has injected, as the previous comments from the Haitian community are pretty accurate. And I think the concern and the fear and anxiety is kind of across the board. I've heard from a lot of my prior clients, some of whom are U.S. citizens, about being concerned, as to enforcement actions. So I think this is kind of an expected outcome based upon what the president has indicated he wants to do, and he's carrying out what he ran on.
And are these raids, following the letter of the law?
So generally speaking, the president and the Department of Homeland Security has the authority to do what they're doing. Mr. Trump has been very good about broadcasting and making a show of the muscular efforts from the Department of Homeland Security. To my knowledge, nothing is being done outside the authority that's granted to the president by the Congress. So he's following the law. He's just doing it in a much more broadcasted, intentional, maybe attention-grabbing way compared to what's been done in the past by previous administrations.
Did previous administrations, specifically the Obama administration and the Biden administration, also do deportations as the way they're being done right now by the Trump administration?
They did. I just don't think it was done in as much of a headline-grabbing manner. Mr. Obama's presidency particularly was relatively enforcement-heavy. I mean, one of the monikers that President Obama had was the deporter-in-chief. Enforcement actions were quite high and pretty robust under the Obama administration. The Biden administration really had a pullback. It's kind of a mixture of President Biden coming in during COVID, and obviously during COVID, the government just wasn't functioning at such a rate. And also, it was a very intentional policy determination that they weren't going to enforce or weren't going to be as out there and as visible as Mr. Trump is. And Mr. Trump has really made an effort to making clear that the enforcement piece of his immigration policy is going to be front and center. So it's not as if these things didn't exist. I just don't think they existed in such a headline-grabbing way.
And what impact do you think that has, that it is so out there right now? Is it sending a message to people who are outside the country right now wanting to get in?
I think so. I think that there's very much a deterrent factor that the Trump administration is trying to indicate to folks that aren't even in the United States yet. Here are the conditions that are going to exist in the country if and when you do get here, if you're going to try to get here. So I think that's been relatively intentional of trying to discourage people from trying to enter the United States unlawfully, knowing that there is this heavy law enforcement presence waiting for them if they're going to try to enter the country unlawfully.
Is your firm getting a lot more calls over the last week or so?
Yeah, it's been much busier than expected. And I think there's sometimes obviously it's a Friday, there's a little bit of an exhaustion that sets in, but it's been ever since the election. We've seen a marked uptick in calls and people taking actions, people scheduling appointments since November. Obviously since the inauguration was only 10 days ago. So it's been busy.
What are you hearing from people who are calling? What are their concerns and questions?
I think there's just a general sense of concern in terms of what the concern is really uncertainty. And I think that's really what's driving a lot of people calling in is they're not sure as to what's going to happen. This weekend, I'm actually going to be speaking at a church with, I think, 100, 150 attendees coming. And I know a lot of them are just going to have questions about what should I do if I run into ICE? Like I mentioned, I had a client of mine who's a citizen. She's been a citizen for 8-10 years now. is concerned about what happens if I get stopped by ICE. What do I do? And I think that's the uncertainty that's driving a lot of people trying to figure out what their options are. And I will say, Mr. Trump's been quite the motivator. People that have been sitting on actions that they can take are now taking them. People are applying for citizenship. People are trying to find ways in which to remedy their status. And, that's really been a lot of what our focus has been, of trying to find solutions for folks that are here in the United States, many of which are green card holders who want to apply for citizenship now because they're worried about their green card status.
President Trump also has stated that he wants to end birthright citizenship. That's being challenged in court. What do you think will happen with that, and what about the measure, the push for that itself?
Well, I think ultimately the case will probably make its way to the Supreme Court. Birthright citizenship is enshrined in the 14th Amendment, and people can have very good faith policy discussions as to what it entails. The way birthright citizenship has been treated ever since the 14th Amendment passed is that if you're born in the United States, you're a United States citizen. There's a clause which essentially says if you're born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, which is kind of what the argument is based on, is who's subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. So my opinion, I think the way that we've always interpreted it is going to stand. There's very few carve-outs. So children of foreign diplomats aren't considered citizens, but I think it's my opinion, it's a little bit of a show. Mr. Trump has said that this is what he's going to try to do. Do I think they're going to win? I don't, but in this environment, ultimately it's going to probably end up in front of the Supreme Court.
And finally, Rishi, in the time we have left, just what do you think ultimately will be the result of these immigration efforts by the Trump administration?
Well, the one thing I would tell your viewers is that the government moves slowly. And I realize that the president ran on this idea of doing all the stuff very quickly. But folks that work with the government often note is that things don't move slowly with the government. Part of our system is to give people the opportunity to have their case heard. And so, if someone interacts with ICE, they're not immediately going to be sent to the airport and get deported. They have the opportunity to go see an immigration judge, make their claim for being able to stay in the United States. And that's what we want. We want a system that hears people out, and we want a system that is going to treat people fairly and not just kind of heavy-handedly just remove somebody from the United States without understanding what their story is. So my inclination is that a lot of money is going to need to be spent towards achieving Mr. Trump's aims. But realistically, is the government going to be capable of deporting 10, 15 million people in the next 4 years? I just don't see how that's possible.
Rishi Oza with Brown Immigration Law, thank you for your perspective this morning. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
See you soon. Well, dozens of people carrying signs and Mexican flags gathered along busy Morse Road in Columbus Wednesday night to show their support for immigrant families. They protested recent changes in policies on immigration. 10 TV's Carly Dion spoke to some who were making their voices heard.
I had a close friend who got just deported on Monday.
Michael Guzman Martinez says he's adjusting to a new, harsh reality.
I walk around my passport, I have my ID, I memorize my social security number just in case.
It's an adjustment that has many immigrant families now living in fear. Although Martinez says he's a legal U.S. citizen, his parents, who came to the United States from Mexico, are undocumented. He says they moved here in the early 90s.
I was having a talk with my mom yesterday and my dad as well, and they were like, if they deport us, it's okay. You're old enough to take care of you and your siblings.
But it's something he's fighting against.
Honestly, it's not okay, especially for me, because I want them near me. And so I don't want them to go back to Mexico.
Martinez says his parents came here to live out the American dream, and he made good on their hopes for him to have a better life.
I graduated high school. I went to Ohio State. I'm an alum from Ohio State as well. I got my real estate license at 19. I bought my first house this year, my primary house, and I'm only 23. Like they wanted a better opportunity for their kids, and they got it.
Michelle Resendiz has a similar background.
Me personally, I am the product of illegal immigration, and I'm proud of that. This is not anything about criminals. We are not criminals. We are not here to steal your jobs. We are here for much more. We are here to accomplish much more for our families and our future families.
Which is why she's speaking out and protesting deportations and giving a voice to the voiceless.
all of the younger generations are here speaking up for our older generations who may not have the legal status to come out here and protest for themselves and speak up for themselves.
That was Carly Dion reporting. Martinez says the main message they wanted to send to immigrant families is they are not alone and they will continue to fight for them. Could President Trump's proposed tariffs on Canada and Mexico lead to a trade war that would hurt Ohio businesses? Next on Face the State, Ohio Chamber of Commerce CEO Steve Stivers on the fears of retaliatory tariffs, plus where he thinks tariffs could be good for the U.S. And later, changing the rules for recreational marijuana. New legislation could make it more expensive to buy and affect how much Ohioans can grow at home. We'll break down the brand new bill. Welcome back to Face the State. The Trump administration announced new potential tariffs on China, Mexico, and Canada. As of the taping of this show, they were not in effect. China would face a 10% tariff across the board on goods. Mexico and Canada could face a 25% tariff. Ohio Chamber of Commerce President and CEO Steve Stivers is a former U.S. Congressman for the state of Ohio. He believes most of the tariffs could be part of a larger deal putting America first. 10 TV's Clay Gordon sat down with Stivers to talk about the potential impacts of the Trump tariffs on Ohio businesses.
Mr. Stivers, we are hearing a lot of tariffs talk right now from the White House. What was your initial reaction? This was a campaign promise, and it looks like it's coming to fruition.
Well, certainly President Trump talked about tariffs during the campaign. This shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. And while, we are a business organization that's generally free enterprise, when you think about tariffs against folks like China that are violating trade laws, manipulating their currency, dumping products, it's hard to really argue against those. And in fact, those probably are needed. It's a smart strategy to use the threat of tariffs to bring people to the table. And we'll see what happens, but we would be very concerned, especially on the energy that goes back and forth. We have oil refineries in Ohio, 6 oil refineries. One of the major feeders to those oil refineries is Canadian crude oil and Canadian energy. And if there was a tariff on that, it could really hit consumers at the gas pump. And that's a place that consumers pay a lot of attention.
What are you hearing from your members? Because Ohio, the state of Ohio's largest importers and exports go to Canada, Mexico, and China.
Yeah.
So what are you hearing from some of your members that have to do business with Canada and Mexico frequently?
Our members are concerned, but I think, I will tell you, we did a survey of our members. They are more optimistic about the economy now than they have been in any time since I've been here, and I've been here 3.5 years. So I think generally they feel good about less regulation, consistent taxes. The tariffs sometimes can scare some of our members for sure, but so far it's been fairly measured, and we're going to work to try to make sure the administration hears both sides on tariffs. We know they know some of the good things about tariffs. We want to help them understand that sometimes tariffs can hurt consumers. But we do have members that are sort of stuck where China's the only place they can do business, and I think there might need to be some considerations around those things. If it's the only place you can get something, then there's not much you can do to plan around it. But a lot of our members are actively rearranging their supply chain and have been for 3 to 5 years.
Now, there are already tariffs on China in place from
That's correct,
Trump's
from the first
administration.
Trump. And the Biden administration didn't do away with any of those tariffs.
And what was the impact for Ohio businesses with that first round?
Well, there was a lot of supply chain rearranging that started during the first Trump administration or even a little before, and then accelerated during COVID, which was at the end of the Trump administration. So there's been years to try to start to pull some of that back.
I talked to 2 economists yesterday. Their concern was retaliatory tariffs, specifically with Mexico and Canada.
In Canada, for sure.
So they pose that some Ohio farmers could be impacted the most.
For sure.
Corn and soybean, and then our auto industry here too. So if they do kind of stay in place as is, what does the Ohio Chamber do in a situation like that?
Well, we would be very concerned about retaliatory tariffs as well. I was in Congress when we negotiated and changed the North American trade arrangement to the USMCA, and that was under the Trump administration. I think it was a good deal for the United States. It was a good deal for American workers. It was a good deal for Canada and Mexico. That's why all three countries ratified it. We're living under the USMCA right now, and it's treating us pretty well, in my opinion. But if the administration wants to try to get a better deal on a few things, I'm all in favor of having them look at that. I hope they don't just, blanket tariffs, that they try to come to a new negotiation on USMCA if there's problems with it.
Finally, do you think Ohio business can keep up with some tariffs? Because usually you cut out maybe some Chinese manufacturers, and it falls in on local businesses or American businesses to kind of take that infrastructure on. Do you think Ohio's prepared for that?
I think we are prepared to grow and surge with any demand that's available. We certainly are always, most of our members are right now looking for employees. The unemployment rate is relatively low, 4.3%. And so one of the questions is, do we have enough workers? But I feel confident in the productivity of the Ohio and the American workers to meet the demand that comes. And that's a good thing. When sales increase, that's great for America, American income, American families, and our quality of life.
Former Congressman Steve Stivers, thank you.
Hey, thank you.
And we have more from Steve Stivers right now on 10tv.com. Turning to the State House now. State lawmakers are trying to change the rules on recreational marijuana in Ohio. The new Senate Bill 56 would increase the tax on recreational marijuana sales from 10% to 15%. The bill would also get rid of the Cannabis Social Equity and Jobs Fund. That's one of the 4 categories where the tax revenue from the recreational marijuana sales goes. And the bill aims to lower the limit of homegrown plants from 12 to 6 per household. Local dispensaries tell us they are following this new bill closely.
Politics play a huge role in our economy every day. It would be ridiculous not to pay attention to what's going on with our board and how it affects our business.
The bill was just introduced this past week, so it is still a long way from possibly going up for a vote. Coming up next, truckers against trafficking. They're joining forces with Travel Centers of America to try to roll out a new campaign. The goal? To save people from a life trapped in human trafficking. And you can help. We'll tell you how. There's a new partnership in Ohio to help put an end to human trafficking. Attorney General Dave Yost announced the Travel Centers of America and the nonprofit Truckers Against Trafficking are joining forces in a new awareness campaign. The goal is all about increasing awareness on Ohio's roadways. Bumper stickers and signs inside travel centers will show this hotline. It's 844-END-OHHT. That's End Ohio Human Trafficking. The CEO of Travel Centers of America talked about the importance of this initiative.
We are committed to help combat this crime. We're so proud in that we train our nearly 19,000 team members to look out for the signs of human trafficking.
Then on Thursday, the Attorney General's office announced another easy way to report suspected human trafficking. Apple and Android users can now download the new End OHHT app. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. We'll see you back here next Sunday at 11:30 for another Face the State.